Jane is something I hear all the time, especially now that Zeb Wells has taken over the Amazing Spider-Man title. Hey, it's Jug. Mary Jane is one of the most well-known members of Spider-Man's supporting cast. I mean, for a time, she was even married to Spider-Man, until that was retconned out of existence. So obviously, MJ has had a long history with Spider-Man, and she herself has gone through a plethora of character changes. So why are people saying Marvel ruined Mary Jane? Well, most people who are saying that are probably complaining about the current Amazing Spider-Man run written by Zeb Wells. Wells took over the title in 2022 after the previous author, Nick Spencer, left the book. Spencer had made tons of strides in writing things that made Spider-Man fans happy, like retconning the Green Goblin O-Face out of existence, or at least the Green Goblin's relationship with Gwen Stacy, and reuniting Mary Jane and Peter Parker in an official relationship and hinting that they were gonna get engaged. This was the first real time that Peter Parker and Mary Jane were really back together since One More Day. There were times it was like, will they, won't they get back together, or should we try this again? But no, this was the first real time they were officially back together, and they might even get engaged. It was unbelievable Marvel was allowing this. So of course people were excited when they heard Zeb Wells was taking over the title. Wells had written stuff for Spider-Man before, and it wasn't terrible. Some of his stuff was actually pretty good. So fans were excited to have this relationship between Peter and MJ carried into Wells' era. However, when the first issue came out, a lot of people changed their minds. You see, in the first issue, everything was different with no explanation. First off, Peter and MJ were broken up and hated each other. There was also this new guy, Paul, that Mary Jane was dating, and they somehow had kids together. All these crazy things wouldn't even be explained to the audience, like, why did this happen, for over 20 issues. So to put that in context, for over a year, Spider-Man fans were left to stew in anger about why all this was happening, which was only made worse by storylines they didn't even enjoy, compounding the hatred towards Wells' run. And fans were also upset about other decisions being made, like the secret Spider-Man retcon sidekick, Spider-Boy. But he turned out to actually be pretty cool. Check out our video on him here. When explanation came for what exactly happened, you know, Mary Jane being trapped in another dimension with this random guy, Paul, and this guy, Paul and her find these kids and decide to help raise them, and Peter Parker's trying to get back to the dimension where Mary Jane is, but he can't do it in time, and time moves differently in Mary Jane's dimension, so she's aging faster and blah blah blah, so he can't get back in time, so time, it's just a few hours or days for him, but it's months or years for her, and it makes no sense. But fans were pretty disappointed. Not only did they not like the explanation, but it was kind of lackluster, and characters had to act out of character for the plot to even move forward and cause this to happen. But although these were all major controversial changes to MJ, there was still one more change that hurt the character of Mary Jane even further, and that was Jackpot. Mary Jane has had a number of solo runs over the years, with some of the runs being okay, and others, like Mary Jane and Black Cat, being pretty awesome. But at the start of Zeb Wells' run, Mary Jane now suddenly had superpowers. Did I forget to mention that earlier? Yeah, Mary Jane now had these weird gambling powers, which would honestly be pretty awesome normally since, you know, it's gambling, but they were given to her by Paul, and we hate Paul. We hate Paul! Anyway, these powers allow her to spin a slot machine armband thing at the risk of her life and get a random set of superpowers. I don't know, they really just kind of took her, like, you hit the jackpot tiger thing she used to say, and turned it into a superpower. I don't know. But for many, this was the final nail in the coffin for Marvel ruining Mary Jane. Now you might be asking, why is Mary Jane being a superhero wrong, Jug? These are superhero comics. Well, let me explain. First off, there was no real build-up to this. There was no time taken to show Mary Jane becoming a hero, and no time taken to show why Mary Jane feels she needs to be a superhero. For a time, she mentions that she's doing this for her kids, you know, the ones that she found with Paul in this alternate dimension, but they end up not even being real, and she continues to do the superhero thing. So why? It just feels like she needs more character motivation fleshed out for why she's this Jackpot character. Which sort of brings us to our next point. Her impetus for becoming a hero is flawed, which I'll concede can be okay sometimes. But for Mary Jane, there's no personal stakes or big hero moment that compels her to become a hero. So why is she doing this at all? Especially because this is a character who at some points in the past, under different writers, sometimes had issues with Peter Parker being a superhero and risking his life. What caused this drastic change in her that made her want to be a superhero? Speaking of her character, that brings us to our final point. Her role. Mary Jane has long been one of Spider-Man's supporting cast members, meant to ground the whole narrative. I mean, we're talking about a crazy superhero story where this teenage guy gets powers and is swinging in his tights above the city. We need some sort of grounding character drama that doesn't focus on that sometimes. Unlike Peter, who has that superhero personal life balance and fighting and all this other stuff to make his character interesting, for Mary Jane, it's always been her civilian dynamic and relationship with Peter that's made her character so enthralling and compelling. But in one fell swoop, that's all been taken away. I'm also not even gonna mention the fact that her costume's not the most fashionable and she was kind of like a fashion icon and model. All of this has caused some Spider-Man fans to believe that Marvel has officially ruined Mary Jane. But what do you think? Did Marvel ruin Mary Jane? If so, is there some way to save her character? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.